This is the Geek Speak Show Book Club. Sci-fi, fantasy, horror, graphic novels, biographies. You'll hear them here on the Geek Speak Show Book Club.
I'm going to let this play for a little bit because I mentioned it last week. This is officially going to be the last final ever book club we do on the Geek Speak Show. But as The Last Jedi told us, no one's ever really gone, because in case you missed the announcement, it's moving over to the Week in Geek, our Friday episode, because Annie kept hinting that she wanted to talk about books and authors, so it's going to move over there. You'll hear us do the book club on the Week in Geek, but this is the last time that we'll do it here on the Geek Speak Show. Something that started way back in season number 2, I believe it was, and we've had many moments, some good, some sad, some surprising. And this last one, I think I can say we saved the best for last, because it's a book that's a little different than anything we've ever featured before. It's when you start looking at and reading that the summaries and everything, you probably think, well, how does that fit into the geek culture and the stuff that you guys talk about? Well, you'll see, actually, because it's a book. It's part of a trilogy now, the People of the Sign trilogy. The newest is called The Rod of Iron. The author, Wade Fransson, is going to join us in just a second. But the book, it's not about superheroes, not about any of that stuff. But one thing, how I'm going to tie it into you guys, to the audience, is lately, and Aaron, I think you and I talked about it, not on the show, but just off the air. Lately, I've seen, met, and experienced many creatives who, for whatever reason, give up on their dream. It seems like they're doing great. It's going fantastic. It's great, but one little thing goes wrong, or my video doesn't come out right, my show doesn't go right, my podcast, whatever it is you're doing, my web series, my TV show doesn't get greenlit, my movie doesn't get greenlit, and they give up instead of seeing it as okay, well, let me go back, try it again, do it all over again. That's what I want to take out of this series. So let's welcome Wade to the show. Wade Fransson, welcome to the Geek Speak Show.
Hey guys, so glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So before we get into the Rod of Iron, for those who may not be familiar with the People of the Sign trilogy, give us a previously on what's been happening. Don't give it away so we can get people to go get it, but give us what are the first 2 books about before we get into the new one.
Yeah, so the People of the Sign is an autobiographical quest, search for the Holy Grail, if you will, in real life. And it all started really when I was 8 and my parents divorced, and I was kidnapped and smuggled out of the country. You've heard recently about borders and children separated from their parents. Well, that's what happened. My mom had custody. My dad told the babysitter he was taking us to the mall, just didn't say the mall was in Sweden. Managed to get passports arranged in about 10 days, got us out of the country, and then we were separated from both parents for 2 years in an international court battle that went to the Supreme Court of Sweden. Before my dad ultimately lost, we were back in America with an alcoholic mother, then in an orphanage, and all of that just, sort of preteen years. So that led to a lot of angst, a lot of questioning of why. How could this happen? It was pretty traumatic, and led to a lifelong search for answers that then meandered through 50 different countries, archaeology, searching in holy writings from various faiths, and trying to piece together the big answers to our existence. Why am I here? Why does crap happen to people? And ultimately, what does it mean for them? That's how the People of the Sign started. The idea of the sign is that each of us feels connected to something bigger than ourselves, and we're looking for a sign. We also have hope. We have some sense that there is meaning, that there is an answer out there. And to your point about never giving up, that's something I've never given up on, is that there are answers, and there perhaps is even a big answer.
Yes, and those themes are actually what because when I started reading it, that's actually what caught my attention in a weird way. Is like, wait, starts with a kidnapping, a little bit like Taken is what the first thing that I thought of, but in real life is the difference. But there's a lot of the themes that go through your story are themes that are in the things that we talk about, that we talk about over the years here on the Geek Speak Show with the book club especially. And that's how I'm going to tie it in with because again, a lot of people who go on the website, I have a description, you guys can get it there. When they look at it, they may think, well, wait, this is not about superheroes or horror or anything like that. But so that's why I wanted Wade to tell you in his own words what it was about, so you can see the themes that do touch on a lot of the stories that we watch, and why you guys would like this book. So now, having said that, let's have you talk a little bit about the new one, The Rod of Iron. So talk about what that one's going to be about.
Yeah, so first, just a word about the second book, which is called The Hardness of the Heart. So after those first experiences, I found a way out of that darkness and got aligned with actually a fundamentalist religion that many would consider a cult.
Right.
And that all sort of falls apart at the end of The People of Sign, and you're left. I'm on a plane heading back from Hawaii, wondering, what just happened? Where do I go from here? Well, where I went from there was what I call my Mother Teresa phase, and I started getting involved in stuff in India, trying to get a foundation going for homeless children in Chennai, where at the time there were 2 million homeless and 400,000 of those were children. And because of my own experiences, I wanted to do something to help, and I wanted to just throw myself on the global mosh pit and try to help people, even as other things in my life were kind of falling apart, my marriage, for example. While in India, I had some success, and I was later given a Lifetime Achievement Award. So I finished that second book, and I'm beginning to work on the third one. And I was invited to present at a series of conferences as the keynote speaker from the West, opened by the governor of the state of Tamil Nadu, who called me an eminent American writer. That's on my wall. It's awesome. But I'm up in the middle of the night, jet lagged like crazy, praying, and suddenly I have this epiphany that answers the big question that I started to ask, which is some of these stories in the book of Genesis that people consider to be myths, like the Tower of Babel. I came across this idea that there was somebody named the Gate of God in 1844. And I thought, well, Gate of God, Bob L., the Tower of Babel, the city that Nimrod built way back when God came down and confused the languages and said, no, you're not building this tower to heaven. And I came up with this crazy idea that it was connected to the moon landing in our modern age. And for people who know anything about the book of Revelation, you've got this thing called Babylon the Great, and how it causes havoc. And to your listeners, all these things are in science fiction. I mean, who hasn't heard of Stargate and read stories or seen even, the movie about Noah, which has all these weird creatures and giants in the opening scenes. So all these myths and stories resonate with people because they speak to things that are true. And, for me, I believe that there was some meaning to these things, whether they do come from space aliens originally or some being that exists outside of space and time and can know the future and foretell it in the form of prophecies. So I started chasing all this down increasingly after my visit to India. And that's when I got into some Native American prophecies about when the eagle lands on the moon and the Native American peoples of the United States will then be free. And certain symbols I started looking up on government websites. So all this stuff sounds fantastic. But the Rod of Iron documents it all, step by step, piece by piece, and weaves it into a story that I believe is very believable and yet mind-blowing.
What was your goal when you started writing these books?
It's kind of funny. So I spent 10 years in Europe, and I had all these experiences such as, many people may not remember that before Putin, there was this guy named Gorbachev who sort of tried to change the Soviet Union, and then it collapsed. Well, he was actually abducted in a hardline coup, and I happened to be in Leningrad at the time he was abducted. I was also in South Africa. I spent 10 years in a tent in Alaska in the winter, and I've traveled all around the world. I had all these experiences, and I would meet people in Europe, and we would share, and I had 2 people in the space of 3 months basically looked at me and said, you're a congenital liar. You're making all this stuff up. None of this stuff happened. You weren't kidnapped. You weren't in Leningrad when Gorbachev was abducted. So really the start of this was when I had my first child and I was up in the middle of the night, because, you do that when you have a new baby in the house, I started writing down my story, and it was probably triggered by the fact that I now had kids, and I wanted to document the truth of my life in a way that would be accessible and tell a story and give meaning not only to me, but to my children as to who their dad was. That's really how it started. And, I was still seeking for the ultimate answers at that time, so I really didn't know where it would go. And after I published the first 2 books, I had that epiphany in India. I actually had to rewrite both of them in order to align them with the things that I had learned, because there were certain bridges to nowhere, and there were certain key things or themes that were in the book that had to be elevated and highlighted to tie into the ultimate conclusions. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the reason I started writing was because people told me I was a liar about the events and facts of my own life.
That's a good enough reason for me. Who do you hope will read this book?
And that's what I decided. It had to be names, dates, places, facts that nothing in the book. And I sent it to lots of people. I said, if you see anything in here that's wrong, well, if you're featured in this book, you may not like it, but if there's anything I said that's not 100% accurate, you tell me, because I don't want a single error anywhere in this book. I don't want somebody to find a loose thread and start pulling at my hypothesis and unravel the answer.
Who do you hope will read this book and connect with your story?
Well, my goal also, so the first thing was, I did want to write it down, but so why should anybody read it? What I tried to do was use the circumstances of my somewhat crazy, fantastic life in a way that the person could sort of walk in my shoes and look over my shoulder, and they might not have had quite the same drama or trauma, but I wanted them to open up and reflect on their own history. What did they experience as a kid? What led to them believing what they believe today? Have they ever questioned the beliefs that somebody gave them or that they bought into through some event, through some emotional connection that causes them to hang on to a belief? And I really wanted people to open up and reflect on their own experience and come up with a new answer that works for them. I wasn't trying to tell them that this is the answer for them. Here's an answer I found. There's an answer I found. This is how I thought this was this way, and then learned later it was that way. And it's been very rewarding because people from all walks of life have told me that that's exactly how they read the book, or the books now.
Yeah, Wade, you are. I'm listening to your story here. You are the literal definition of a well-traveled person. Some of them not by your choice, as you mentioned at the beginning, but you're definitely the definition of a well-traveled person, and that's why you have so many viewpoints in your story and in the books. But going off of that, this is what I hope our readers, because I know there are a lot of creative people in our audience listening to this. What do you hope someone who calls himself a creative, whether a writer like yourself or artist or whatever they do, what do they hope? What do you hope that if they read your books, what do you want them to take? What message do you want them to take from from your books?
Well, for creative people, I would say, I ended up starting my own publishing company because I wanted 100% creative control of my work. And we now, that company, Something or Other Publishing, has a #1 global bestseller right now, which is not my book, it's somebody else's book. And it was the #1 mover and shaker on Amazon in Australia. The #1 new release in the entire country. So that's now putting the company on the map and giving me the freedom that I've longed for in terms of continuing to do what I want to do. And I hope, to take the show on the road, talk about my own work and the company more. So what I would say is, do stay true to who and what it is and how you want to tell your story, or how you want to convey what it is that you see. One of the ideas behind the publishing company is that every single person on this planet has at least one book in them, and they should be allowed to tell that or write that book and deliver that story to the world in their own way. So the thing I've created is called author-driven publishing. We help people crowdsource their readers before they publish, and 8 of the last 9 published books have all become #1 rated hot releases on Amazon. So there's something unique about you, there's a special reason why you're here, and you've got a story to tell through whatever means, whether it's art, writing, sculpture, painting, or through some craft or work or service to mankind. And the world needs that unique perspective. The world needs that diverse piece of whatever gem you represent in order to balance things out. And that really does go back to the idea of the Tower of Babel. And what I learned there is that, not to give too much away, but part of the thing is mankind at that stage was immature and was using, the accumulation of power, and this tower to heaven was designed to elevate one ruler and bring people around him and to, so that he could sort of enslave them. But the moon landing represents people from all over the world coming to the United States, learning one language and working together and achieving what was before made impossible, which is to build a tower to heaven, i.e. to put a man on the moon. And it was the diversity of America. You might have seen that movie Hidden Figures that was out recently, about how that diversity is needed in order for the whole to succeed.
I think that's the best advice. Are there any other books that you're working on?
So I'm personally going to take a break, but we're from writing for now. But we're putting out a children's book called Willow Rose Learns Honesty, which is about a willow bush that she's trying to hide her thorns because she's afraid that her friends, or that she won't have friends if they realize that she could hurt them, and so she lies about the fact that she has thorns, and that doesn't go well for her. It's a wonderful little book by a woman who's a ballet teacher who had started a place called Storybook Ballet, and the book is designed to be danced to. So she makes costumes that represent the characters, and rather than having them be, Cinderella or some princess, she has them be the characters in her books which teach different lessons. So we're really proud of being connected with her.
That's super.
And I might do a pitch for a guy out your way called Ray Friesen, who has also some young people's books, but he does these great illustrated, it's kind of like graphic novels for junior high kids that are fun, all about like dinosaurs right now. He's got one called, a series of 3 books called Thunder Ranch. So we're working with him, on some ideas about distribution and marketing. So yeah, we're very excited about the projects that are coming our way due to our success.
Awesome. Where can we find you? Websites and social media?
We focus on Amazon. We have several accounts on Twitter that are quite large. The main one is soupllc.com. So by the way, the other thing about me, Wade Fransson, I'm the only one in the Googleverse, for better or worse. So all that weird eclectic background, you Google me, you find it all. WadeFransson.com is a website I have, or the books are available on Amazon. We try to, push Amazon because we want those rankings when the books sell. So The Rod of Iron by Wade Fransson, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, we'll have a link to everything on the show description. You guys can get it. And again, all you guys will enjoy it, though it doesn't sound like something that would be up your alley if you call yourself a geek. Believe me, there's a lot of life lessons in there. So, Wade Fransson, thanks a lot for coming on and being the final book club we ever did, at least on the Geek Speak show. Like I said, it is moving. It's not going away forever. But thanks a lot, Wade, for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Aaron. And all the best to you guys.